Oda has just dropped the biggest secret in One Piece. Yes, even bigger than Luffy's sun god Nico Fruit. I'm talking about Dr. Vegapunk's real face.
Hey y'all, come look at this.
One Piece chapter 1066 revealed so much. From number 1, what's happened in the Void Century. Number 2, the follow-up to the tragic incident of Ohara. Number 3, Oda has yet again failed to kill another one. But no, seriously, I'm happy with this one. But most importantly, number 4, Dr. Vegapunks and Dragon's 22-year plan of Luffy's and Joy Boy's arrival. Chapter 1066 starts with the Straw Hats being extremely confused about how it's possible for a futuristic city like Egghead Island to exist so far in the past. This is when Vegapunk Shaka reveals how the greatest archaeologist, who we come to know is none other than Professor Clover, risked his life to research the ancient kingdom. He found a machine in a certain place, which included a timestamp of the date it came from. Now I'm pretty sure this is not the poneglyph and something entirely different. We'll come to know what exactly this machine could be, but Robin big brains it, guessing it was from the Void Century, to which Vegapunk is intrigued by how much Robin could actually know, since after all she is from Ohara and likely has a tremendous amount of knowledge, some of which even he might not know. Speaking of which, they then get on the topic of Ohara, where Vegapunk explains that he doesn't have that much information regarding it and just knows that it was an extremely tragic story. This shows that Shaka has empathy, unlike some of the other versions of Vegapunk like Lilith for instance. Vegapunk then gives us some extra context and confirmation about Ohara's destruction, recounting what we already know about the ancient kingdom, speaking about their huge war against the 20 allied nation who won and eventually formed the current world government. Vegapunk further elaborates that the ancient kingdom was wiped out to prevent anyone else following the same ideology, and through our anime bullshit science we can explain what this ideology was. You know, by now everyone should be on the same page. Joy Boy possessing the Nika fruit was the liberator in his time. Representing the ancient kingdom, he wanted to unite the world. Giants, Lunarians, fish people, humans, literally every race under one sun. However, all of that was wiped from history. In fact, even the phrasing Vegapunk uses of "that kingdom was erased from existence" is kind of a nod to how Imusama and the 5 elders phrased the destruction of Rurusia, saying that this island never existed. This obviously was done purposely by Oda because it backs up our theory we made a while back regarding Imusama and Joy Boy. To put things in a nutshell, Imudi, Judas's and Joy Boy's ideology clashed, though they were once friends. However, the contrast between their goals and way of thinking led to Imu betraying Joy Boy by tricking and using Joy Boy's friend Sunisha. Imu was able to turn the tides against Joy Boy and the ancient kingdom, giving the allied nation the opportunity to attack. This ultimately led to the downfall of the ancient kingdom and Joy Boy failing to keep his promise with the mermaid princess Poseidon of that time. Imusama, being so close to Joy Boy and possibly even from the ancient kingdom, managed to get access to one of the ancient technology, in Imu's case Uranus. And so, just like God Valley, Rurusia, the ancient kingdom was blown from the skies into smithereens. But for reals, it's likely because of the defense, the ancient kingdom wasn't really destroyed. Rather, it could have been just like blown out of proportion. Hence all the theories of Shandora or even Laugh Tale being part of the ancient kingdom long time ago. So yes, this means that Imusama was from the past and is still living on. Likely because of the, you guessed it, the immortality surgery using the Ope Ope no Mi. Regardless, Imusama along with the 5 elders wants to wipe out anything relating to the ancient kingdom. This is even reinforced by Vegapunk. When Sanji asks what the hell happens to those who know, well, Vegapunk just says bluntly, they are obliterated. Obviously, Usopp gets terrified, claiming that he didn't hear anything. He's gonna play dumb, but it's too late. The thought of becoming a target just by having an idea or knowledge is the very definition of mass control. However, Vegapunk states that the government acknowledging this as a threat made Ohara's theory of the Void Century century and what they all know to be true. Hearing all this from Shaka frustrates Robin. She proceeds to tell him that the people of Ohara cleverly put this theory together but made a mistake in talking about it. Furthermore, she tells Vegapunk that as such a high figure in the government, he can't possibly understand. He in turn refused this, saying that just because he's Vegapunk, it doesn't mean shit. To Imu and the higher ups, he's just like the rest of them. He can't disclose any information either, or he too will be obliterated. Robin then finally questions, how does Vegapunk know all about this? Especially Ohara, which was wiped out by a Buster Cole years ago. But Vegapunk states that the will of Ohara lives. He then explains how 22 years ago, when Ohara was labeled as an evil scholar group planning to take over the world and destroyed by the world government, the world was in uproar, especially when a lone girl survived, that girl being Nico Robin. Robin struggled to listen to this and reliving all she went through, which is kind of sad, you know, because all of us, let's be honest, we all cried, alright? Let's be truthful about this. There's no shame in this, okay? It's fine. But some months later from the incident, Vegapunk paid a visit to Ohara, which had become a burning field. Dr. Vegapunk was actually an old acquaintance of Professor Clover and had always seen him as a shining beacon of hope. Prior to Ohara, Clover was actually an adventurer, similar to pirates on the sea. He was a mischievous guy. He traveled the world for answers. It could be that pirates of today, who are dubbed criminals, were just seen as adventurers back in the ancient kingdom. However, adventuring or piracy is now illegal as the government doesn't want the secrets of the world revealed. That's why Vegapunk, who has learnt about this ancient truth, refers to his good friend Clover as an adventurer, even though my man looks like he's pirating around with a sword in hand. Furthermore, Professor Clover got into conflicts with the world government even during his tenure as an adventurer, but still he became famous as the #1 archaeologist in the world. He then gathered every scholar he could find in Ohara, thus making a sanctuary for archaeologists. Vegapunk was very close to him, to a point where he even was broken by his demise, calling it a tragedy for such a talented man. Vegapunk starts to recall his time in Ohara, where he witnesses the tree of knowledge burning down. Going to the lake nearby, he finds most of the literature that the archaeologists written drowning inside. He comes to the conclusion that the scholars try to save their life's work, which was more important than any riches the world could offer, protecting their own fortunes by dumping it into the lake. Though some soldiers did end up finding it, they didn't realize its value and just left it there, considering it as rubble from the island. Call it fate or destiny. Regardless, this is a follow-up to chapter 397. Professor Clover and Nico Robin's mother's attempt to save as much materials as they can paid fruition. Oda's foreshadowing of this came full circle. Vegapunk even states how much of a victory this was for Ohara, as the main motive for the government was to take out the evil archaeologist and their work into the ancient kingdom. But they failed, as both Nico Robin and some of the books of Ohara survived. Her mother's goal to preserve the history of the world succeeded. Rather than running away to save their lives, the scholars tried to save the very books that the government sought to destroy. Whilst fire engulfs the entire island, Robin relives the moment she met her mother for the first time since, she was a baby. Vegapunk, being a man of science, could not stop his tears from flowing, which in turn made everyone in the room start bawling out. Like, come on Oda, we shedded enough tears during the first flashback of Ohara. But the crew, being dumb as ever, gets enraged by the fact that Vegapunk had made Robin cry. Robin, on the other hand, drops her guard down, confirms Ohara did try to bring light to the ancient kingdom, reaffirming Vegapunk's analysis of the war that happened 800 years ago. She then questions Vegapunk on the whereabouts of the books of Ohara. Vegapunk explains that he initially wanted to get the books back with him to Punk Hazard, but his pleas to his higher ups fell on deaf ears. is. Now we don't know who exactly is he referring to. I doubt it was the 5 elders, rather more likely Kong or Sengoku. At this point, we actually get a proper flashback of what went down, where we finally see the real Vegapunk. He looks like a comical version of Albert Einstein with a typical older type drawn out features. Look at this massive ass head. My guy took the Widow D too literally. I would have done Vegapunk dirty, man, I can't lie. In this flashback, we see a younger Vegapunk. He has nice black hair, that goes around his smooth head. Vegapunk witnesses a group of giants in the ruin, trying to pull out all the books from the lake. Suddenly, a voice calls out to him from behind. As Vegapunk turns around, he realizes it's none other than Monkey D. Dragon. The conversation between these two shows us that they knew each other from before. Now, this could relate back to our theory that Dragon was a former marine, hence his ties with Vegapunk. After giving a jab at Vegapunk's big ass head, Dragon finally explains to Vegapunk he and Professor Clover was also old acquaintances, which Vegapunk nods off as a common ground for both of them. However, Dragon doesn't take long before his anger gets the best of him, insinuating Vegapunk as a sellout to the government, refusing to join his mission in liberation. Vegapunk even back then required the funds of the government to materialize his invention, which Dragon could not provide. But even so, Vegapunk understood that there was something amiss when they labeled Professor Clover a criminal, saying that this information had to be manipulated. Now, it's worth noting that Dragon had already started the Liberation Army at this point, at the age of 33 years old, whilst Vegapunk was the head researcher at Punk Hazard, which gives us 3 more years until Luffy's birth, as Luffy is currently around 19 years old and the Ohara incident was 22 years prior to the present day. This could give more incentive towards our theory that Vegapunk might have played a bigger part in what we think behind Luffy's birth. Yes, Monkey D. Dragon and Vegapunk made a 22-year plan after the events of Ohara. As we find out later, Dr. Vegapunk absorbed the knowledge of Ohara and the Void Century in his big brain, which helped him in his scientific endeavors, one of which must have been a plan with Dragon to bring forth Luffy into the world. Now this theory is a huge stretch, but still holds some weight. Like Luffy's mother is still yet to be revealed, and we know from this chapter 1066, Dragon had started the Revolutionary Army only 22 years ago, and 3 years later, Luffy was born. Which means the idea of Dragon losing his wife, igniting his revolution doesn't make sense. Rather, our theory of Dragon's mother being a celestial dragon and actually dying is more likely now than ever. But if you guys want to learn more about that, then watch the video in the pinned comment section below. Regardless, Dragon losing his friends, including Professor Clover, would have made him wary to settle down, especially after declaring war against the world government. From a simple peaceful liberation cause, he went full throttle and formed the Revolutionary Army. But Dragon still made time to go to the East Blue to make a family? Huh? That don't make sense. Well, this brings us back to our theory, and the idea of Luffy's DNA during his birth was purposely mutated and manipulated by Dr. Vegapunk. Think about it. All ingredients from Vegapunk's involvement with Mads and his expertise in DNA manipulation, to his blueprints of the Nika fruit, to his meeting with Dragon after Clover's death, to him reading the secrets of the Void Century, to then Luffy being born 3 years after all of these events. I mean, like, come on. You think the Zoan fruit, which has a will of its own, just randomly found its way to a 7-year-old boy in the East Blue? Like, come on, it can't just be coincidence. This same fruit, for over 800 years, managed to escape the grasp of the government. Yet, it was eaten by Luffy, who dreamed to be the best pirate the world has ever seen. A pirate whose dream was just like that of the Pirate King. Luffy's goal 100% coincides with Joyboy's and the Ancient Kingdom's ideology. So what I'm trying to say is, the reason why the Nika fruit chose Luffy was because it was attracted to him. Like two opposite poles of a magnet, it sensed its original master within Luffy. Well, because Vegapunk intentionally manipulated his DNA for this very reason.
But coming back to the chapter, Dragon explains that the group of giants who were rescuing the books are from Elbaf and are being led by a mysterious man covered in bandages. This mysterious person had a personal quest to save the assets that Ohara left behind and not let their efforts go to vain. Dragon continues expressing his disappointment at the fact that such a brilliant man can still be working for such an evil organization and even rejects the liberation cause. But Vegapunk defends himself, saying that his wisdom and technology would be wasted and go useless as the liberation makes no money and they're broke. He then goes ahead saying that one of the main reasons he's in the world government is to make the people here listen to him. This could be a hint to Vegapunk being amongst the leadership of Sword, even so far as pushing himself after the death of his close friend Professor Clover to make a difference in the world government. We all initially thought that Kuzan might be the leader of Sword, or even someone like Garp, who refuses to be promoted as anything higher than a vice admiral due to his hatred of the Celestial Dragon and the Gorosei. But now, we might actually have a clue onto the beginnings of Sword. Rather than one leader, there could be a select group of Marines working behind the scenes. But coming back to the chapter, Dragon shows his hatred and anger towards the world government, saying that the scholars of Ohara were defenseless and powerless people who were unarmed against the might of the world government, and they were mercilessly bullied and murdered in the name of justice, calling this an unreasonable opinion. His anger was at an all-time high. That's why he decided to create the Revolutionary Army, to Vegapunk's shock, saying that Vegapunk is someone who hates violence, so why is he creating a freaking army? I thought he was a pacifist. That's what Vegapunk's thinking. Dragon has had enough. Losing his close friend Clover was the straw that broke the camel's back. However, this interaction between Dragon and Vegapunk gives a better insight into their relationship, which is actually closer than it appears. And thus, in that year, Dragon created the Revolutionary Army alongside Emporio Ivankov and Bartholomew Kuma. Now, the initial Liberation Army or the Liberation Cause might just be a smaller version of the now massive Revolutionary Army. The Ohara incident and the death of his close friend Clover has given Dragon the incentive to create an army to oppose the tyranny of the world government, making parallels to Dragon and Vegapunk. Vegapunk might just be doing the same with Sword when it comes to the Marines and the Navy, but he isn't creating an army and going to war. He's instead trying to change the system from the inside. Even Tashigi, Helmeppo, and Sword members are on the base right next to Egghead Island. This was the first location they chose to come after Kobe's capture by Blackbeard. Alright, like, why would they come there if they didn't think Vegapunk would be an ally? Nami gets riled up by the passion Dragon showed, as Usopp naturally shows an interest in the information that they went to Elbaf. Remember that Usopp's dream is to go there and become the brave warrior of the sea. Robin is shocked that Dragon and Clover knew each other, showing that she does not know everything about her homeland and its people. The Straw Hats are representing us viewers in this chapter, not knowing how to react. Frankie is literally scrambling, wondering why he even remodeled Kuma and why Kuma helped them. We get some very good news now though. The knowledge of Ohara did not fall into enemy hands, it ended up in Elbaf. And Vegapunk went to Elbaf and memorized all of the findings of Ohara. And who was this giant? Well, it was none other than Jaguar D. Saul. Yes, 22 years ago, Aokiji did not freeze Saul to death. You cannot freeze Oda's will to not kill a character. That's just impossible. But it actually makes sense that Jaguar D. Saul is alive because we never actually saw him die. And Aokiji, his best friend, do you really think he froze him to death? Maybe instead of like when Aokiji froze Luffy and Robin, the Straw Hats used cool water to unfreeze them quickly. But in Jaguar D. Saul's case, the ice naturally eventually thawed away and melted. But because it was a slow process, he got frostbite and he has to have bandages all over him. Alright, let's be honest. If Pell survived, anyone can survive, okay? Oda has already set that precedent. Plus, Aokiji's actions of joining Blackbeard gives rise to more questions now. Like, does Kuzan know Sol is alive? If so, what is his end goal? Are they working together? And what does Kuzan want from Blackbeard? Regardless, Robin is obviously delighted. She actually has someone she considered family still alive. He is still in hiding with no one being able to divulge his location, but he is alive. Robin thanks Vegapunk from the bottom of her heart, telling him to carry the will of Ohara with him, to which he replies, "I am an ally to all scholars." Shaka controls the Straw Hat's boots to follow him and says that he has something to show them. We go back to the chaos with Luffy wanting to ride the legendary machine from the Void Century. Yeah, Luffy does not give a shit. Luffy and Chopper think it needs a password and start screaming random stuff at it as Bonnie and Jinbei make fun of them, but it starts to shake. What the hell? Luffy thinks it's about to explode when the real Vegapunk appears. He was warping space, but it's not working very well as he gets stuck on the floor. I mean, this kind of power is almost unheard of in One Piece. I mean, manipulating the laws of space and time, and it looks like it's not even a devil fruit power. What is this? But yeah, he does get stuck on the floor, and Luffy attempts to pull him out, and when he does, Vegapunk says he's been expecting a dragon's son to appear. Expecting? What do you mean expecting? How you know dragon's son was about to come to you, bro? An interesting note to mention is he doesn't have his interesting head shape anymore. Likely meaning that he segmented a lot of his intelligence and brain, implementing them into 6 Vegapunks we know, explaining his goofy attitude also. Bonnie is furious with Vegapunk for what he did to her father, but it turns out there is likely more to this story given Vegapunk's reaction to seeing her. He seems genuine in his happiness to see her, showing that he and Kuma were not enemies, which makes sense given that Kuma supposedly offered his body voluntarily to the government, when in fact he gave his body to Vegapunk specifically believing in. Given what we have learned throughout this chapter and Vegapunk's relationship with the revolutionaries and Dragon, we could see Vegapunk getting Kuma back to normal very soon, and considering the fact that Kuma is with Dragon right now, Luffy is finally going to meet his father. Back to the chapter though, Vegapunk is acting very goofy and tells Luffy as well as Chopper to press the button on the side of their boots. They shoot up to the sky with Luffy laughing in his typical way. Vegapunk introducing time warp to floating in the sky. It's all a foreshadowing to Luffy unlocking his Gear 6 ability to control time and space. But anyway, go check out the video where we explain how this time warping, space manipulating ability of Luffy's could work. Alright, go watch that video.